Hello, everybody. Welcome to our session. I am Tina Diamond, and I'm here with Microsoft. I lead the Data and AI Specialist in Microsoft Azure, and we help empower our customers to do more with data and analytics, and I am joined with Mr. Simon Turner.
Thank you, Tina.
I'm going to sit.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. My name is Simon Turner. I'm the CTO for Avanade for the UK and Ireland.
And we are going to have a fireside chat with Mr. Turner. And I've got my notes to keep me on some type of structure, because you'll find out very soon that Simon and I can talk to each other for about an hour. So hopefully we'll get out of it what you would like. And the theme is all around how the flow of data is transforming the water industry. And both Simon and I work with water customers, and you're doing some really cool stuff with Anglian Water and other water companies. And just a little bit of background. I mean, the water industry is, in the UK, it's quite unique. They're private sector, but they used to be public. They're still regulated. They still have all sorts of compliance that they need to do. They work with public policy, yet they've got a completely privatized system, and they each have their own territory, so they're a monopoly, yet they all compete when it comes to other aspects of getting funded, and so it's quite a complex industry, but it's an industry that gets a lot of press. A lot of people, water, we would all die without water. But it's an industry that, because we know a little bit, I think there's some misunderstandings and misconceptions, but we had an open data water event last week with I think there were 11 water companies that joined, and they're really, really passionate about things like sustainability, around vision, where they're going. Data is at the heart, and they can't do it without data. So you have been doing some phenomenal work with Anglian Water, and I'm not going to steal your thunder, but I would love to hear a little bit about your journey with Anglian Water and what they're doing with a digital ecological twin.
Yes, yeah. It's been a fascinating journey. I mean, for all the reasons that you just outlined, the water industry is unique and also fascinating. They have, in some areas, some really, really incredibly advanced technology, especially around the ecological side of things. Some of the water treatment plants that we've seen with Anglian are really state-of-the-art in terms of how they're trying to treat water. On the other end of the scale, they have incredibly old infrastructure that it's literally been around for hundreds of years, and they're finding it very difficult to manage those two ends of the scale. In some areas, it's a very data-rich organization, Anglian. In other areas, they're slightly data poor. The big thing that they're really trying to do, though, is to leverage data to increase public awareness, because it's typically the public are their main consumers, and also the main consumers of media in terms of how they're seen in the press, which is sometimes not shown in the best light. And trying to help understand why some of these events occur was one of the areas that we've done with them. And our journey's been about 18 months or so now, and it was originally a partnership with Microsoft through Lewis Richards. He brought us in to help them understand what innovation could look like on the Azure stack. And this was off the back of something we'd done with another organization within the renewables sector. And so Lewis was very keen to help us talk to Anglian, to talk to them about what innovation might look like. That led to quite a detailed set of workshops around what an ecological digital twin would look like. And that in turn led to a session with Ofwat. So Muzzy Jorgensen, your Chief Sustainability Officer, Robin Price, one of the directors from Anglian, and myself presented to Ofwat's Dragon's Den, which was a great session. It was all virtual, so it was quite interesting from that point of view. But we actually got granted the funding. Yeah. So we managed to win quite a sizable fund from Ofwat to help Anglian look at bringing this to life. And the key element of that is transparency. Is how do we enable Anglian to show up in an understandable and a transparent way to their consumers? And that's what we've been doing for the last 20 weeks now. It's actually building that, understanding what that looks like to put in front of users, and really showing what the subsequent phases would look like.
No, absolutely phenomenal. And, you kind of summed up in one word what you're trying to achieve, and that's transparency. Yeah. What is the further water ambition that not just, because I know that this is not just going to be for Anglian. There are other water industries that can take what they've done, and I still think it's cool, and that's, I think, I can barely say it, digital ecological twin, yeah. But it sounds kind of futuristic for a water company. Like, what are they doing on the ground? What is it that their ambition of, having this, basically a model of a river with all of the levers? What are they trying to achieve with this?
They have big ambitions around this, and it's the reason that the digital twin. We're sometimes a little bit careful about how we use the term digital twin, because a lot of people think of a digital twin as being very IoT focused and responsible for managing real-time data from sensors. This digital twin is built on top of what we term a domain-specific ontology. So we designed an ontology that describes a chalk aquifer in Norwich, just north of Norwich, in an area called Stiffkey. It's quite a small focused area that covers about 30 square miles. But the ontology that we've built is based on basic principles as to how a river system works. And the goal with this, and the goal with the Ofwat funding, is to be able to help the water industry at large. So the domain ontology that we've built can be extended. Chalk aquifers, there's only about 300 of them in the world, so that's quite specific. But if you go back down the layers of the ontology, it gets more generic. So we're able to apply it to other types of river systems. And that's the goal that Anglian have, is to be able to take the learnings, take the systems that we're building out to other parts of the water industry, so that the system can be implemented in other areas. But then the next part of the question is, what do they want to be able to do with that? And it's really understanding and predicting events. So how can they understand when some of these big water events are going to happen? When are mains risings going to occur? When are they likely to have problems around sewage treatment plants? But then also to take proactive steps to try and prevent those as well. So it's all about creating a data system that allows them to be both proactive and reactive to those events, but also to do it in a way that's very transparent to the public as well. And the public form a really, really key part of this whole process as well. There's a long story about the systems that we're implementing. We've got a thing called River Keeper, River Viewer, and River Planner. And River Keeper is aimed at the people that work, live, and play within the river's environment. And it's designed to help them help Anglian collect data. And that's a very key part of this. This transparency is really, really key.
No, phenomenal. So I'm going to switch gears a little bit, because it's not just all about the tech. It's the tech is there to enable what they're trying to achieve and to reach their ambition, but fundamentally it's people that need to build some stuff to do to get some insights and see how they can optimize better, predict kind of how they can predict their maintenance, predict their water flow, overflow. In your experience, how important is culture and making sure that the end users, people understand how to access, get their data, set up their ways of working around this new world, especially in cloud?
Yeah, it's absolutely essential. When the project started with the funding from Ofwat, we were all very actively encouraged to create a much wider ecosystem of partners. Is anybody from academia here? Okay, phew. So we've got people from the industry, people from technology. We've also got the academics in there as well. And one of the things that we first found was that people's expectations of time frames was really different. And we would talk about a 14-week project from start to finish, and the academia environment was talking about that as being their very, very first starting to get going phase. So we had to reset people's ways of working, people's expectations about the speed with which we wanted to work, and also the way in which we were going to share data. And culture is really, really key, because sometimes we found that people's immediate reaction would be to be quite possessive around the data and quite protective. Anglian's absolute fundamental sort of start point with this is we have to be transparent, we have to share, both from the consumers right the way down through all of the partners channel as well. And that was a big fundamental culture change for some of the partners that we were working with. Microsoft, was it last week or the week before, the Open Water Foundation?
It was last week.
Last week. There was a very important meeting to talk about sharing data within the water industry and understanding what levels of standards we need to create around data sharing, around APIs. And again, it's moving people forward in understanding the importance of sharing information. That was one of the biggest changes from a cultural point of view.
Amazing. And ultimately, you know, the if we build it, they will come no longer seems to apply. How do you make sure that you're also building something for the people that are going to do something with it?
Yeah.
I mean, how are you getting the not just the, okay, we're setting up our ways of working, we're getting people understanding about where we need to go culturally, but then are we making sure that the people that are going to use it, do something really special with it, are part of the journey?
Yeah. And that has been a significant part of the project. It's been both engaging with consumers and users, but then also engaging with Anglian's business to make sure that it was both usable and pragmatic in the way that they would collect information. So we did design-led thinking sessions with focus groups, understanding what people that use the river systems needed, and also with the business to understand how they collected data. And that's been an important part of making sure that this becomes a sticky endeavor so that people continue to use it. Because Anglian's very well aware of the fact that even if we start well now, if people stop using it and stop collecting data over longer periods of time, it's going to fall into disrepair effectively, and the value from it won't be maintained. So it's hugely important that the systems are usable.
Amazing. So especially now with the era of OpenAI and everybody looking at doing and trying POCs, how do we make sure we don't fall into the trap? And I've heard the term POC Death Valley. How do we make sure that we go from, you know, proving, you know, the tech and the business value to getting it into the hands of those users that are waiting and excited to receive, you know, the finished product?
I mean, that's a great question, and we were probably helped by time, because when we started this project, the hype around Gen AI hadn't landed at that point, and it meant that we were able to have a very well understood, stable project backbone in place before everybody started to want to layer on OpenAI and Gen AI in those tools. So we were able to effectively weave those POCs into an already existing project. And what that gave us was a framework that could demonstrate value from the POCs very quickly. So we very quickly stopped calling them POCs and called them proof of values instead. And that enabled the business to be able to, I know it sounds a bit marketing-y, but come on that journey with us. They could see what these systems could do, they understood the value, and they could buy into it very, very quickly. That proof of value very quickly became part of the project framework. So we were able to take it from a not exactly a point solution, but something that was proving a point, into something that we could productionize very, very quickly.
Thank you. So you mentioned earlier the partner ecosystem. I mean, Microsoft, the only way we're going to really truly help our customers is scaling what they're trying to do, their ambition, and we can't do that without partners.
Yep.
You've mentioned a little bit about, developing the partner ecosystem. How important and critical is that to being successful as an organization and somebody like Anglian and other water companies?
It's hugely important because there's no one partner involved in this project that can do everything. We need to lean on partners for their strengths. So whilst we're very good at data, we have less experience with some of the wide area network technology required to capture the data from the IoT sensors. So being able to call in experts that understand LoRa networks in that infrastructure, super important. We've built out a big, I think there's about 14 partners now involved with this project, and everybody brings different skills and different values in that. That also stretches not just within the technology sector though, but also within the environmental sector as well. So we've been working really closely with the Norfolk Rivers Trust as well. They've been helping to feed in requirements, keeping us honest about data collection, showing us what's important, and also helping us understand how we improve water quality. So again, that partner ecosystem, hugely important.
That's amazing. And it resonates back to what you said at the beginning. It's all about transparency, and transparency even within the ecosystem.
Yes.
So what would you say are some best practices at scale that you've learned or you now are starting to see are really critical and you can take them to other customers, other industries?
I think it comes back to one of the main points that we discovered comes back to one of your early questions around culture. Making sure that cultures are correctly aligned within the project is hugely important. Making sure that everybody agrees around the principles of data sharing, for example, again, hugely important. Being able to scale it really requires that alignment of vision within different areas, and this is why we turn to things like the Azure Digital Twin to support the ontology, so that we knew that it could scale quickly and effectively as well.
Amazing. So I think my last question is, what could other industries learn from the water industry in how they've been able to kind of get on this journey, work within the confines of a regulated industry and but also trying to be innovative and kind of have this really, really big ambition and be at the forefront actually of an industry that's sharing amongst each other?
And I mean, it's a really good question, because it's one of the things that we've learned from Anglian, which is this is persistence. That they have an amazing clarity of vision in terms of what they want to achieve, but they've also been incredibly persistent in how they've pursued that. It's actually surprisingly difficult being a water company. They are bombarded by media, they're bombarded by bad press, they have difficulties managing their image in some areas, but Anglian have absolutely consistently been persistent in trying to create this level of transparency. Even when there's some sort of slightly difficult press, they continue to make sure that they are informing the public as best they can in that area. The other thing that they've brought is this insistence on sharing data. So enabling that wider vision across other organizations is really important. And one of the things we've started to discuss with them is this concept of a circular economy, and understanding how, especially within environmental environments, if you're able to get actors within these environments to work together, you can start to reduce things like carbon footprint in certain areas and improve the environment for everybody's benefit.
Yeah, because definitely sustainability, we were looking at some of the principles within the Open Data Forum, and sustainability came up as a principle, and actually all of the hands of the water CIOs popped up to say that's not a principle. It should be fundamentally built into everything we do. It can't be something and sustainability. It's part of the fabric.
Yeah, and Anglian is a great example of that, because they build sustainability in at the core of everything that they do. they took us to see this catchment area, and they showed us the water treatment plants that they've been working on. These things take years to grow because they're built from vegetation and plants. They have to plan for years in advance to make sure that they've got the right capacity with the right type of water treatment environment in there. And they've invested a huge amount, both time, effort, and money in making sure that these ecosystems exist now. It's quite fascinating, and that's all driven by sustainability and their commitment to the environment.
One thing when we were in the Open Data Forum that actually was so telling and actually crystallized so much, the water companies were in the same room as the regulators, Ofwat, as well as the environmental agency who create policy, and all of them were looking at how can we work together. But the first question that somebody asked was, what's that, a definition of, what is a definition of X or Y? And no one had the same definition. So it's even just level setting on understanding each other's perspectives, where their focus is, because one of the water companies said, actually, we've been working on a POC with 2 other water companies, and we, within the water industry, had to agree on some of the terminology that we used just within the water industry. So how can we expect Ofwat, EA, to understand our world unless we all agree upon it? And for me, it was everybody was in the room, willing to talk about it, which was 50% of job done. And they have a 12-month roadmap to see, and they've put it very realistic. They've said, what can we achieve in the next 12 months together? And, I think at the end of it, they're going to be doing a hackathon, which is quite cool, but all together, all 3 areas. So it's just an exciting time, I think, in the water industry.
Yeah, absolutely agree. And I think, to your point there, I have one client, even internally, they couldn't agree on the definition of what a data platform was. And there's some real basic principles to get right around terminology and taxonomy so that everybody's talking the same language. And that helps things massively.
No, amazing. So I don't have any more questions. I think we could probably take maybe 1 or 2. I think your hand popped up quicker, and then the gentleman next to you.
Hello. Okay. Thank you. That was really interesting. I thought what you said about proof of values was really interesting, but is that value do you take as a strict definition, or does it depend on the project? So some people see value as money, others would see it as being able to have insights.
So that's a brilliant question, because to that last point, agreeing on terms, it is super important. And typically, we try and align with what our business stakeholders see as value. Sometimes it's money, sometimes it's reduction in carbon footprint, sometimes it's data transparency and sharing, but it has to be value as defined by the business, because ultimately they're paying for our time and paying for this project, but it also means that they'll buy into it and continue to use it going forwards. So it has to be business aligned in terms of value.
I think the gentleman was next in the blue jacket.
Yeah. Hi, thank you for the talk. It was really good to get your insights. The question I've got is, you mentioned POC by death and kind of the backbone of the project already being in place before the Gen AI boom. What would you have done differently if you were going to do the project now, given all the complexities that you spoke about?
Oh, that's a really difficult question for me to answer, because we probably wouldn't do anything differently, because there's so much hype around things like Gen AI at the moment, and it's so important to get people to understand as a tool, where can you use it successfully versus where do people just get carried away and produce new shiny chatbots. That having that, again, back to that question around value, having something that shows value to the business is super important, because everyone can get excited and carried away by a chatbot that can show you how to get a sandwich out of a VHS player, for those of you that remember what a VHS player is. But to be able to show value to a business in a meaningful way aside from the tech is really important. So we probably wouldn't be doing anything different, having that backbone that allows us to demonstrate progress and value. But then we maybe would have different technologies to understand how do we consume unstructured data and use large language models to understand entities and commonality in some of those areas. But that's just changing a tool. We probably wouldn't change the overall structure of the project at all.
Cool. Oh, last question. Thank you.
Hi, thank you very much for the talk. Very interesting. I just wanted to ask, you talk about the partner ecosystem. Can you explain a little bit more about the type of partners that are working together?
So we have, typically 3 broad spectrums. There's technology partners that are providing us with pure tech. We've got one company that's providing us with little devices that we can float in the river to measure quality. There's another company that's providing us with devices that measure flow in particular parts of the river. There's organizations like the one I work for, Avanade, which is part consultancy, part tech advisor, and bringing the sort of gluing things together. And then there's the environmental side of things. So there's people like Norfolk Rivers Trust that really and the environmental agency that set some of our goals and targets. But there's typically those sort of three groupings of partners that we've got there. Thank you.
Great. Well, thank you very much. Any other questions, please join us at stand 430 and we can answer any more questions. But thank you very much for your time and hope you enjoy the rest of
Thank
Big
you all.
Data London.